businesses will more likely do business with you if you are VAT registered. It comes with a certain credibility attached to it. However, when you're starting out and in those early days, it can be quite daunting to think that you have to deal with all of the paperwork associated with VAT. So the best advice that we could possibly give is that to get yourself an accountant, get advice from a tax advisor, an expert in this field, which will pay off in the long term.
Well, this is it. That can be expensive, can't it? It might put people off.
One of the best sources of advice for a small business is actually an accountant. When we survey our membership, we ask them where do they go for advice, who do they trust, and at the very top of the list are accountants, because they find that the advice that they receive not only pays off, but it can actually save them money over the medium to long term.
So if there's one thing to not cut off your list, it's the accountant.
Definitely not. When you go into business, it's generally because you've got a good idea, you're excited about that and you want to drive it forward. It's not because you want to get bogged down in tax forms and HR forms. So wherever possible, make sure that you bring the experts into your business and take their advice.
And interest rates, of course, are at an all-time low. How is that affecting business?
Well, low interest rates as they are at the moment should be a good thing for small businesses. The opposite, if interest rates were to increase, as they will do sooner or later, that is going to increase the cost of borrowing. It's going to be making purchasing more difficult, but crucially it's also going to make it more difficult for customers and consumers. We would fear at this stage in the recovery that it would have a negative effect for demand, which is already quite low across a lot of sectors of the economy.
And borrowing is the big problem, isn't it, for business? You can't get a mortgage like you could 5 years ago when it was quite easy to self-certificate. What advice would you give to businesses who need to rent premises?
First and foremost, I think a business needs to ask the question, do they really need premises? Particularly if you're in the process of starting up now. Is it possible to work from home? Is it possible to trade online? In this day and age, every business that can possibly move its trading online through eBay or through websites should do that because the overheads are so much lower. And this is the first recession we've gone through where online trading has been in existence. So every business should be looking to push as much that way as possible. If you do need premises, there are a range of things you have to consider. Buying a property can be a long-term investment, but in the short term, it can be very costly and it can be very unpredictable. Mortgage rates fluctuate, so if you're trying to have a business plan over the medium term, that can be very difficult. Renting, conversely, can bring much more predictability. Rents tend to be fixed, at least for a year or 2 years, but it's important to shop around and make sure that you get a deal that allows you to pay your rent monthly instead of quarterly. It's still only 12% of landlords will accept that rent being paid monthly. But with the economic climate as unpredictable as it is at the moment, it's important that you're not committed to paying large sums of money on a quarterly basis.
So it must be quite hard to find the money up front to buy expensive stuff that you need to run your business.
Particularly at a time when banks